Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel of Pommyinoz. I'm the Pom, Dan. How are you all doing? I hope you're very well and have had a wonderful weekend. This is the Poms Hot Take, where we review the week in AFL. If you are new around here, please like and subscribe. We've just gone over 210 subscribers. It's an absolute amazing honour that so many of you watch me. If we can get to 300, that would be absolutely grouse. And without any further ado, let's get straight into it. So Thursday night it kicked off. It was my beloved Carlton boys, as you can see there behind me. I'm a huge Carlton fan. And yeah, it was a little bit disappointing. I might have gone a little bit early. I might have given it to a lot of the other teams, particularly some of my friends of other AFL sides. I may look like a bit of a dick. But, I mean, I think for me personally, I think when you look at the Geelong game, we played them off the park for 3 quarters. In their own backyard. And I think my frustration stems not so much from I want to win every game. It stems from the fact that I know how good these guys are. I know that on their day, they're just as good as anyone. And for me, it was a real heartbreaking performance. It was very abject the first couple of quarters, and it really did hurt. And I think that goes for a lot of other teams. I think this AFL season, let's talk about that first. The AFL 2020 season is just mind-bogglingly weird, isn't it? I mean, like this weekend you had the Pies play the Bombers and they got oh so close, and usually in a fourth quarter, Collingwood, they'd come back, wouldn't they? They would literally, if they got within a goal in the fourth quarter, they usually run over teams. But, I mean, it's that season. The hubs, just the indecision, the shortened quarters, I don't know what it is, but you just don't trust any side to get the job done. And I think that's probably a polar perspective of with Carlton as well. You just don't trust sides at the moment, and it's a tough one. There was no real surprises this week. The Eagles, obviously, they're back to winning ways. But let's talk about the horror story. Matt Rowell doing his shoulder. As of now, we don't know how severe it is, but that is a total shame. This guy is an absolute brute, and he has really been probably one of the shining lights for me of 2020. I've really enjoyed seeing Rowell's cut, his endeavour, his natural ability, and it's going to be, I think, a less of a season without him. We know the bookies paid out big money on the rising star. He was at one stage second, third in the Brownlow betting, and it is a shame because you just don't want to see a player of that calibre injured. It was in a ceremonial game though. Gary Ablett's 350. What a wonderful career Gaz Jr. has had. Big fan of his. He was one of the first players that I remember when I first came here that I saw a lot of. And as a sports fan, I love seeing the best play in their craft. And he's a magician, a little master, is a moniker that I've never been a fan of. But yeah, he's a phenomenal player, and there is no getting away from it. Like your Tendulkars, who shares the same moniker, it's a delight to have him in the comp, and a wonderful career he's had. And I mean, part of me, I hate to say this, hopes Geelong get up for him. I'd love him to retire with a flag. I think he deserves to bow out on a high. I know he's won one before, but wouldn't it be great? The Doggies, they looked their important best. Brisbane, they look very good. The Battle of the Bulge, as I called it, Freo versus Adelaide. Freo got up, and some exciting young players at Fremantle. Fremantle I always consider probably one of the sides I like because I'm a big fan of purple. It is my lucky colour. They're really impressed with some of them young core of players they've got. That Hayden Young looks quite the footballer. Caleb Sarong, we know I was a big fan of him pre-draft. He looks really good. Richmond returned to winning ways. And let's talk a bit about Richmond. A couple of players not wanting to go into the hub. For me, I heard Brereton say he wouldn't trust blokes that wouldn't do it. Now, for me, I'm a parent, and a lot of you guys are. I know what it's like to have a kid, and for me, I kind of understand it. And I understand the argument people are possessing when people compare them to cricketers, and cricketers know they're going to be away. But for me, I'd look at it this way, and from my time in sport, there was always a camaraderie between fellow professionals. And for me, I wonder where that is, because to me, if this season doesn't go ahead, we know that there's huge financial ramifications. That has been clarified by Gillian. Even with this loan that they've got, there is huge financial ramifications if the season doesn't get completed. So for me, I would always be thinking when I base this decision on my fellow pros. And it's 6 to 12 weeks at the moment has been touted. It's not really a big, long time in the grand scheme of things. I think when you've got players like Kelly who have got kids, and it was a notorious issue of why he moved back to Western Australia because of the wellness of his children, because they've got a condition. I'm not too sure what that is. I probably should have researched it. But when he's willing to hub, I always think that you've got to be in it together. So for me, I'm not a big fan of it. I respect the players for doing it. For me, if I was a teammate though, I would probably be in the same boat thinking that we're all in this together. Think of the rookies, think of the draftees, think of the guys on the less wage, think of your backroom staff. Potentially the ramifications could be they lose their jobs if there's not the funding there. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it. And obviously we ended the week with the Giants, and the Giants looked very good, and they look back to form. Obviously, looking ahead, Carlton have got the doggies, and they look good, so let's hope that COVID affects them like it has every other team, and when you have a good week, you have a bad week, because to me that is the big symptoms of COVID. Talking about COVID, Collingwood have been in the news this week, and Eddie Maguire, honestly, you know, if he quits the media, he could make a lot of money giving excuses to wives for husbands, because frick me, they were good. Like, let's just talk about the Steele Sidebottom case. So I've got a good friend who's linked with Collingwood Football Club. He did tip me off on this. I didn't quite believe the story, and then the original story came out and it mirrored that, and I was like, Jesus. And let's talk about that. I loved, my favourite bit of Eddie Maguire describing it was, we've all done it. We've got up to go to the toilet and we've gone through the wrong door and ended up in the city. Jesus, man. Honestly, I respect Eddie in the terms of he's defending his players, but man, when you've said that players should have huge fines and huge bans and then saying that you back him in and you respect him for admitting it, there's no respecting someone for admitting it when you get caught by the police. Like, legit, you can't respect someone for that, because kind of that's it. It's game over. You know, when the cops are there and you're in the back of the police car, it's probably not the time to, you know, start admitting it, because you're pretty guilty. I mean, Eddie, quality bants, bro. Respect that. I respect a brother that looks after other brothers. I've always done that, but Jesus, man. Steele Sidebottom's a disgrace. And then we have the Degoe allegations. Obviously, we don't know much about this. I know there's this argument that it was a long time ago, but to me, I'm always a believer of no smoke without fire, but you're also innocent and proven guilty. It'll be interesting to see, though, how Eddie looks after this in the week ahead, because he's going to be under the microscope. He's made a rod for his own back. And it's going to be an interesting time, this, for Collingwood, because they've got a lot of off-field issues now, and they're in the press for all the wrong reasons, especially taking a loss to the Bombers, which was it was a big shock for many. It's going to be interesting times, and like Collingwood now, this is kind of, I would have said at the start of this year it was make or break. They're in the Premiership window, and that window's getting smaller. And players like Degoe and Steele Sidebottom doing this, how does that affect the younger crew? Probably not a great time to be a Collingwood fan. I have a lot of respect for Collingwood fans. I have a lot of friends who are, even though I'm a Carlton fan, I respect good football. And yeah, man, Jesus, we've been through it at Carlton, and we'll smile and laugh, but it's not good. In Twitter news, Shelley Ware, big Carlton fan, was again racially abused. What is going on with Twitter and Instagram, people? Come on. I think the worst thing for me is when I checked one of the profiles, someone had actually lit the profile. He's from Victoria, and I was just thinking, we've screwed the AFL season up. We've screwed literally our entire lives up because people just can't do the simple thing. Like, what are Victorians doing that the rest of Australia's not? It's not that hard. Like, honestly, it's black in my head. Like, if my kids can understand the principles, how are people who are allowed to vote not understanding it? But that's we'll digress. But to drop monkey emojis and racial abuse, like, racial abuse to me is horrible at any time. And I've been fortunate enough travelling the world. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of cultures. I put my foot in the mouth a lot because being a Pom, we say it as we see it, and sometimes things are perceived the wrong way. But like, for me, racism is one thing that I draw the line. And like, spending time in India and spending time in Africa, and I had the privilege of doing it, you meet some wonderful people along the way. And for me, prejudice is a thing that's taught. It's learned. when I went overseas, and I don't mind admitting this, coming from the north of England, we're quite to ourselves. Do you know what I mean? We are quite, there is kind of like a racial hybrid. We are used to Indian immigrants and Pakistani immigrants. They're quite heavy in the north. But there is kind of that prejudice that grows up through the years and the generations. And when I moved overseas, I realised that it's just people, man. People. And that's sex, race, sexual orientation, anything. It's just people. And I just can't believe it's still going on in 2020, especially with all that's going on in the world. To me, I know you've got these trolls that love it for a bit of bants and stuff like that, and they love the reaction, and it's a bit like South Park, with the troll trace and things, but just don't understand how it's funny, and I don't understand what people go through. And I think what's worse is when you go through their Facebook profiles and they've got families and stuff, and you're thinking, what the fuck are you teaching your kids, man? Because just digressing a bit, kids are soaps and sponges, and they pick up subconsciously what you think, and yeah, it just worries me, man. So a big shout out to you, Shelley. I thought you handled it absolutely exemplary, and it's a lesson for us all, really. I think that this needs to stop now. Social media is such a wonderful place, but it's also an evil place. I mean, I get to talk to you guys, people I've never met, and I love it because I get to interact with you guys. And why don't we use it for good, man? Because the world is shit at the moment. And I'm a Carlton fan, so if I'm telling you it's depressing at the moment, it's fucking depressing. But that being said, we've got that. And then also, I think the other big news is they're going to the hubs in the Metricon, and it's quite interesting that they're playing in Queensland, a lot of the Victorian clubs. A lot of them, Carlton have a 50% win record at the Metricon. Then you've got the Doggies, they're about 33%. Gold Coast at 34. It's kind of an interesting place because teams traditionally don't play the Metricon very well, even though Metricon Gold Coast have been poo bucket. There's not a lot of numbers that suggest they're going to play it. Very weird dimensions of the ground as well. It's 10 metres wider, slightly longer than the Optus, so that's why some of the West Coast teams have struggled. The Western Australian teams have struggled. It's going to be a really interesting time, but I mean, I kind of like it. I kind of like the struggle because it's so topsy-turvy. You just don't trust anyone. And I mean, I think for me, this is a wonderful time for a real bit of a light, because to me football has been a real light moment for me. I think at the moment, particularly the job I do and being in work and seeing how people are suffering, football's a nice welcome relief, and it's great that it's still going on. And I wish everyone who has gone to Queensland and Western Australia the best of luck, and I hope everything's really good, and I hope it's all, because it's going to be tough for you being away from home. But I mean, for me, you're doing God's work, in my opinion. This is the small iota that keeps us sane and happy. And I respect all the players for doing that, because it is a tough sacrifice and it is a time of sacrifice. So, I mean, that was the week in review, boys and girls. And as always, big shout out to a few people. Big shout out to Tracy Reid and Dione Rowe, my two lovely girls, and probably two of the big fans of the things I do. I really appreciate your love and support. And I've been criticised that I don't represent my female viewers very well, but I love you both implicitly. I love the banter you possess, and I love the chat. And that is one of the wonderful things think about football. There is no prejudice in football. Boys and girls can talk about football. And that is kind of alien to me, because there is a stigma in the Pommy land that girls don't know about sport. And it is really beautiful that I can talk to my wife, Dione, I can talk to Tracy, and 1,000 other people of all races and sexes. And to me, that's why racism doesn't exist in football. No prejudice does, because it's the great game. It's the one true game, the one single continuity that links us all. I've had a wonderful time with you. I hope you enjoyed Pommy's hot take. We've had another dig at old Eddie Maguire. It's probably not a good thing to do, but have a wonderful week. If I don't see you through the week, I'll see you through the window. Pom out.